It's all about insulation.
Oh hey, wow, look. It's another van insulation video. If you're wondering, yes, it is pretty much the same as every other van insulation video. It starts with sound deadening. You know, because we really want to kill that sound. Kill it dead, no sound. Because this is a van I'm gonna live in. So, no sound is allowed to live. Nope, none.
So that's one down, got a lot more to go.
After getting that pointless instructional part out of the way of something that actually comes with instructions and doesn't need a video made about it, it's time for the actual insulation. The next step for us is going to be actually installing the insulation. I told you. Look, I'm making a template for my rigid foam board insulation. Just like everyone else.
Alright, and instead of boring you with all of the ridiculous details from here on out,
Even though you're already bored.
me just measuring and cutting, we're gonna do a cut scene right now.
Wow.
Alright, and we've got it all done.
And then I'm going to glue that insulation in place and use spray foam insulation to fill the gaps. Whoa. Crazy. And then I'm going to get really crazy. For real. I'm using fiberglass insulation. Okay, but on a serious note, don't use fiberglass insulation unless you are very careful. I decided to put it in the small door cavities and crevices since I knew it's pliable and wouldn't interfere with the operation of the door mechanisms themselves. But I also made sure that my door panels were really well sealed so that no fiberglass particles could make their way into the living space. I actually did go back through and remove pieces of insulation that I didn't think I'd be able to isolate well enough. And then do you know what I did? I insulated the ceiling. And then I insulated the floor. And I hope that you realize this is a completely facetious video because insulation is really boring. It's boring. It's just boring. It's boring. It's boring. It's boring. I guess if you've made it through the entire video, the least I can do is give you some actual tips from my experience. The first and foremost piece of information that you need to adhere to is do your own independent research. Don't just watch van build videos on the internet. Don't just read van build blogs. Do research about the actual thing you're doing. For insulation, go out and learn about R values. Look at ways heat transfers, convection, conduction, radiation. Know these things, and that information, along with your knowledge of what your purpose of the van and what area of the world you live in and the weather that you're gonna be encountering most, that will allow you to make an actual educated decision. Some general tips with the actual install. For the love of all things good and sweet and kind and innocent in this world, Do not install your final flooring before doing your insulation if there's any chance of you using an ounce of spray foam insulation, which you probably will. That stuff does not come off when it gets on things. It's gonna ruin your clothes, it's gonna ruin your flooring. Why do people install their flooring first? It doesn't make sense. It's gonna get destroyed one way or another throughout the rest of the build. I'm rambling. This isn't about flooring. This isn't Taylor. This isn't about flooring. This isn't about. Calm down. Speaking of flooring, insulate your floor. Your feet are gonna thank you about it. There's not a million, there's really only two options to insulate your floor or not insulate your floor. It does make a difference. Putting a flat disc on a grinding wheel is pretty clutch for shaping rigid foam board insulation. There's a disclaimer here. It is messy. Beware. I will just let you judge from this little clip here. It's very satisfying to go through and just get that nice and shaved, smooth. I'm still finding particles of rigid foam insulation from that. Finally, it is a tedious process. At this point, I'm actually almost done with the van build, and the insulation is still like the thing I felt the least confident and comfortable with. It almost seemed like the biggest part of the build. Everybody makes it out to be this thing where if you mess up here, you're gonna have so many plethora of issues and it's gonna ruin your whole build, and eventually it's just gonna destroy everything from rust or mold. And these things are good to keep in mind, but there's so many other decision factors and limiting factors. Where you live, what you do with the van, how you ventilate it, budget. Don't get stuck on the insulation. If there's one thing from this, I forget which blog post it was that I read it. I think it was from Explorer's Life. But you can rack your brain over this for weeks and months and, you know, blow all of your money on it. But at the end of the day, the insulation that you have is the best insulation to have. Just enjoy the process. It's fun if you want it to be. Thanks for sticking with this. Remember to keep it kind. I'll see you in the next one. Let's roll the cost breakdown. Polyisocyanurate. Yeah, that stuff. That is bad design. That doesn't fit on there. How are you supposed to live? Okay, don't